Yo, what's up, guys? Okay, back with another video. And in this video, we're going to be looking at if statements, how we can use them, um, and ultimately bring our games to life. So, before we jump into this in server script service, you want to put your script in. Okay, remove that now. An if statement is a line of code or a piece of code that checks a condition. Okay, true or false condition. So it's either true or false. Okay, so an if statement can also check a number, like if it's 1 or is it 5 or is it 6, or it can check a string. Is it test or whatever else? Test, add, player, or it can even do player.name, right? So an if statement, it comes in very handy. And that's what we're going to jump in today, right? So before we get into the coding, we're going to look at it in block forms, right? So we have these two blocks. So this block here, we're going to make it yellow. This one here we'll make red. Okay. Now it comes in with a new block. Now in this new block, we'll take this as an if statement. Okay. The middle is the if statement. This side here is going to be the player. This side here is going to be the server. Okay. Now, when a player does something on your game, right? Let's say an admin comes to your game and they're an admin of your game and they have admin commands. Now, you want that certain player with that commands to only be able to use a certain command based on their group rank or something like that. Okay. This is when if statement comes in. So they would go and they would run, let's say, bring your friend. Okay, let's say your friend's name or Roblox name is Johnny. They're going to say, bring Johnny. It's going to fire. Then it needs to hit an if statement. That if statement will then agree and say like, okay, yes, you have authority to do that, or you have the rank, so push it to the server. Okay, that's an if statement. An if statement is almost like a gate. Think of it like that. Okay, so essentially what it's doing here in simple words is your admin comes in, tells the server, bring Johnny. But the if statement is going to say, I'm only going to allow you to do that if your group rank is admin or developer or you're the owner, whatever it is. If it matches out, I'll open the gate and you can go and tell the server that. Okay? Turns out Johnny or your friend is not an admin. The if statement is going to block him and he won't be able to do it. Okay? Why do we do this? Because of exploiters. Okay? Or not just exploiters, but you want to have functionality to your game. You want certain players to do certain things where your admins are able to do better things than a current player, or a VIP player of your game who has premium can enter a room compared to a player who doesn't have premium. So that's where if statements come in, and they are impeccably worth having in your game. So let's look at this. So we're going to start off with a variable, local test, or let's do this, local player name equals Johnny. Let's go with Johnny. I'm feeling like Johnny is a good guy here. Okay, so now what we want to do is if player name equals Johnny, then print Johnny is here. Okay, so let's run this quickly and see. So there we have it. Johnny is here, right? Why? Because there it is. The player name is equals to Johnny, right? But now you might be asking, but how am I going to know what player is what? That's where it comes interesting, okay? Because then you would actually need the player on player added, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at some instances over here, okay? And how we can manipulate them. So let's do a simple game dot players dot player added connect function player. Okay, I'll get into more details with this. Don't worry. This will be the next video. Okay, where we'll explain what these are, built-in functions. Okay, but for now, I want you just to ignore this section, as we're going to be looking at the if statement only. Okay, so what we're going to say here, local player, or let's do this, local admin name equals player dot name. Okay, now originally what you would do is you wouldn't save it like this. Okay, you won't save certain items like this, because this means now any player is an admin. Okay, but now let's say we want to get a player ID. So let's do that quickly. Let's go to the profile, get our user ID, and then we want to go admin ID equals that, right? So this is not part of if statements. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'll explain what everything here does in a minute. But what we've done so far is this is self-explanatory. Okay, it's not hard. All it's doing is it's checking when a player joins your game. Once it joins your game, it's going to connect a player, okay, which is the player playing your game, right? Now over here is where it comes a little bit tricky, but it's security protocol basically. Rather save the player's ID rather than saving the player's name. Because think about this, right? Johnny realizes that you are saving admin names instead of admin IDs. And he happens to realize that one of your admins' name is Andy. Now, he can change his Roblox name to Andy, right? And he'll get access. Because why? You are saving a player's name. So when that player's name changes, they no longer have access. But what doesn't change? Your Roblox ID. Your Roblox ID will never change. In 60 years from now, your Roblox ID you have today will still be the same. Okay, it will never change, and it will never be used in a way that it's supposed to change. It will never change, okay? Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to say if player.user ID equals admin ID, then print a developer has joined the game. Okay. Else print there is no developer. Okay. So don't look at this as confusing. It's not confusing, I promise you. Okay. So if we cut this out, and cut this out, okay, all we're left with now is this. Okay, this is what we're left with now, right? So don't get confused that it's not easy to learn. This is super easy. Okay, these are if statements, it's true or false statements, right? So what are we doing here now actually? Excluding this, we're not learning this, right? What we're learning is this, how an if statement works and why do we use them. So what it's saying here is saying, if the player's user ID is equals to this ID, okay, then it needs to count them as a developer. Otherwise, if this ID, this user ID of the player is not equals to this ID, then they shouldn't be counted as a developer, okay? That's essentially what this is doing. Now, if we put it all together, let's do that quickly and see what's the outcome of this, right? Let's run it. So you see, nothing happens, right? So now, let's play it. A developer has joined the game. So, reason for that is because this user ID is the same as this user ID. Right? So essentially, let's dive a bit deeper now. Let's cut that out. So now that was an example of how an if statement is used for security, admin, maybe unlocking doors and things like that. Okay, that's where if statements is your best friend. Now, here comes the tricky part, is working with data and if statements, right? They're not tricky, but a bit more complex, okay? So we're going to say local player age equals 15. Yeah, let's do that. Equals 15. Okay, then we're going to say local player account age equals 15. Okay, now what we want to do is think of it like this. A player joins your game and you want to make sure their account age is at least above this in days. Okay, that's when if statement comes in. But now you also want to check the player's age. That comes in too. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say if player age equals 15 and player account age equals 15, then print, let's do a warn, you are allowed in the game. Okay, so now let's play it. You're allowed in the game. Why? Because this is true. Okay, these values match up. So it's a true statement. It is not false, because now if I had to change this to 16, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to print, because the player age might be valid, but the account age is not valid at all. But now comes the question is, why would we put a number here when we've already stored it? If you've asked that question, great. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to do that and do that. Okay, and let's run it. You are allowed in the game. So this is something very common new developers do make, is though they've already stored the data in a variable, they still for somehow clone the data again to put in if statements. That doesn't make sense, right? When you're using variables, you can always call them later on in your stages, in your scripts and in your game. Okay, now why use an if statement? Like, what is the whole fuss about it, and what comes with if statements? So you have if, then with an end. Okay, so we have if, and, or, not, then. Okay, those are everything that can be used in a if statement. Okay, so here what we can do is local test equals 10. If not test equals 10, then, right? So notice how it's going to do this. It's going to give us an error, right? Because now we're putting a not there, and again we've made the same thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is if not test, then. That's how it works. Okay, print not available. Okay, so this is here. So let's test it. So it doesn't print, right? But now if we had to equals this to null, not available. Why? Because this is not storing any value. The not means there's nothing in there. Okay, now when do you use stuff like this? So for example, last week I was working on a plot system and I was checking who the owner is of the plot system, if there's an owner, if there's not an owner, stuff like that, right? And this is where not comes in. If not, then it needs to do something. Okay, so because this is null, it's gonna print not available, right? Else print test. Okay, let's do that. Let's print the data of the test. So let's put 10 here now. Let's run it. Gives us 10. Why? Because there's data assigned to this variable. There's something that's holding. Test is holding something. Okay. Now, if it was nothing there, it would print this. Now comes the else statement. I'm sure you've already seen this now. This is checking now. If test is equals to null, that's basically what's happening here. If test, let's do it there. If test is equals to nothing, okay, or 0, put it like that, then it needs to do this. It needs to print that. Otherwise, if test is equals to something bigger than 0. Okay, so this is here what it's doing now. Here it's checking, is test equals to nothing or is it equals to 0? If it's equals to one of those two, nothing or 0, it needs to print not available. Otherwise, if test is equal to something bigger than 0 or has at least data, then it needs to print that data, right? So that's essentially what it here is. So problem now is you get developers, right? That will say local test equals 10. Let's do it like that first. Then if test equals 10, then let's just do print, I don't know, let's just do test again, right? Then they're going to say if test is greater or equals to test, then do this. Print, let's say this value is good. Then they're going to come in again and say if test equals something, I don't know, but this that I've shown you now is the worst thing you can possibly do. Why? Because now you're nesting your if statements. Because the minute I go out into here and put an else, this is targeting the first one only. It's not going to target this one, it's not going to target this one at all either. Okay? So what can we do to eliminate this and not having so much if statements all at once? So if test equals 10, then print true. Else if test equals 9, then print this is not true. Okay, so notice now there's not an end here, there's only one end. Okay, because what has we done here now is we've said, okay, if test is equals to 10, it needs to print true. Otherwise, if test is equals to 9, then it needs to do this. So essentially, we've grouped two if statements into one main if statement. This is the strategy you need to focus on. Don't go and change this to another if statement because that's not needed. Okay. More experienced developers are going to joke to you about that. Maybe if you're commissioning, clients will pick that up very quickly. And also it's very messy. You know, I mean, this is much cleaner than having 6 if statements all in one line when you could be using else if. Okay. So just to recap, an if statement is used to check a value. It's used to check whether it's true or if it's false. Okay. If I ask you, what is 10 plus 10? You're going to tell me 20. Now I'm going to say, if 10 plus 10 equals 20, then print correct. Okay, because your answer is correct. But otherwise, if it's not correct, if 10 plus 10 is not 20, then I need to mark you wrong, right? Think of it as an exam paper that you write at school with mathematics or science or doctorate, whatever you do, right? Put it into real life explanation, basically. So hopefully this video did explain a few core details of if statements. I know this video was pretty long, yapping a lot, I'm sorry, but if statements are pretty useful, don't get me wrong, and they're very important when it comes to games. So yeah, if you have any questions, just drop me a comment below and I'll see if I can help you out. Or if you want, you can always join my Discord server. The link will be pinned in the comment section and then I'll see if I can assist you there. But for now, guys, I'll see you in the next video and bye-bye.